this is the only video you need to watch to find and book loads with a new authority. Okay, I'm literally gonna cover everything step by step, and if you just watch this video to the end, I guarantee you will know exactly how to find these loads. By the way, my name is Gurpreet. I run a 7-figure truck dispatching business. Last year, we dispatched over 80 trucks and made $1.4 million doing exactly what I'm about to show you. In this video, I'm actually just gonna walk you guys through the 5 steps to find and book loads for a carrier with a brand new MC. Each step is going to build on the last one, so don't skip around. Honestly, just give me like the next 25 minutes of your time and I swear I'll show you what some dispatchers are paying thousands of dollars for in courses, all for free. So with that being said, let's just jump into the first and probably the most important step, which is the strategy. Now, this is super important, okay? A lot of dispatchers, they'll skip this step because they think it's boring, but if you're working with a new MC, you're going to very quickly realize that most brokers don't want to give you loads, okay? And the reason for that is because to them, you're just a liability. Because just think about it for a second, okay? You have no inspections, you have no safety history, no track record, and if you think about it from their shoes, when brokers hand you a load, they're basically putting their reputation on the line with their shipper. If you mess that load up, they're not only going to look bad, but they're potentially going to lose a contract that's worth millions of dollars, okay? So obviously, most of them don't want to take that risk by working with brand new authorities. However, that doesn't mean that you can just never find loads now, okay? That's just not the case. If that was true, no one would start a new trucking company, but obviously we see that there's hundreds of thousands of new trucking companies being formed every single year. Now again, guys, even though most brokers will not want to work with a new MC owner, there is a different type of broker that will work with new MC owners, and that is the mega brokerages, okay? So think of companies like TQL, CH Robinson, JB Hunt, Echo, you know, these massive brokerages. They have to move thousands of loads every single day. But the problem that they have is that they don't have enough experienced carriers to cover all that volume, okay? So that's why they're more willing to work with brand new authorities versus the smaller brokerages. But there is a catch to working with these type of brokers. These brokers, they run a really tight ship, okay? If you show up late to a delivery, let's say once or twice, you risk getting kicked off their load board entirely. If you cancel last minute and let's say you don't have a solid excuse, they're probably never gonna call you again. Again, these mega brokerages, they might give you a shot, they might wanna work with you, but they're not gonna give you a lot of grace. Also, another thing you need to keep in mind is that if you're dispatching for a new MC authority or you're finding your own loads, let's say you have your own MC authority, you're going to get paid a little less than someone with a seasoned authority. Now, I'm not talking about like thousands of dollars less, but you might get like $100 or $200 less than what other carriers are getting running that same route. But listen, that's just a trade-off that you're gonna have to make to get started in trucking. They're taking a risk by working with you, by giving you access, but you also need to prove your worth to them first before they start giving you higher and higher rates. So, all in all, if you're working with a carrier that has a brand new MC authority, don't overcomplicate this process, okay? Stick to the big brokerages, make clean runs for them, and just network like crazy. It's really that simple. You don't have to overcomplicate this. But listen, here's the part that most dispatchers skip. Even if a broker says yes to working with a new MC authority, how do you know that the load that they're offering you is actually going to make you money? You know, these brokers, they're also going to try and finesse you. So how do you know what rate to negotiate for? What's a good load versus a bad load? Well, this is exactly where step number 2 comes in, which is knowing your numbers. This, in my opinion, is probably the biggest mistake that I see dispatchers make when they're working with new authorities. You could have access to literally every broker in the country, but if you don't know your numbers, you have no idea what to negotiate for when you start calling brokers. And guess what? These brokers, they have no problem giving you like a cheap load and making hundreds of dollars off you. So before you book anything, there are 3 numbers that you need to know for every single carrier that you work with. First and foremost, your CPM or your cost per mile. The second number you need to know is your PPM or profit per mile. And the third one is your RPM or target rate per mile. So let's just go through all these and I'm gonna break them down for you real quick. And also I'm gonna use my truck calculator that I built to run these numbers. This is literally what I use in my dispatching company when I'm working with carriers. And if you want to use it, I'll show you how to download it right after this. So first and foremost, cost per mile. Let's just start with that one. That metric is essentially going to show you everything it takes to run your carrier's truck 1 single mile. So for example, the fuel, the insurance, the repairs, maintenance, factoring, dispatch fees, ELD fees, tolls, all that good stuff. In order to figure out your CPM, all you have to do is plug in all of these expenses into this calculator, and you also need to plug in the average number of miles that your carrier's truck will drive in a single month. You really just need an estimate. You don't need like exact numbers right now, just get close enough. So for example, as you can see, if the carrier's total expenses comes out to $15,000 per month, and you think that their truck is going to run around, let's say 10,000 miles every single month, their CPM will automatically get calculated and it comes out to $1.50. Again, all that number is telling us is that for every single mile that this carrier drives, it's costing them $1.50. So that's your base CPM. Now, let's say the carrier also wants to make $5,000 per month in profit. That's how much money that they want left over in their pocket at the end of the month. In order to figure that out, we need to know their PPM or profit per mile. To do that, we're just gonna plug in $5,000 into this owner profit section, and it's automatically going to divide that by the 10,000 miles that we've already plugged in. And voila, okay? We can see our PPM is 50 cents per mile. Now, for the most important part, if we just add that PPM on top of our base CPM, which again, this calculator has automatically done for us, this new CPM number that we're looking at is actually our target RPM, our target rate per mile. Now, I know that might have been a little hard to follow, but all you need to know is that this $2 per mile number that we have right here is actually showing us how much we need to charge brokers on average to not only cover all of our expenses, but to also make that $5,000 per month profit for our carrier. Again, hopefully I didn't lose you guys there, but in my opinion, this is very cool stuff to figure out for your carrier. So that's the number that you need to keep in your head when you're on the phone with brokers, when you're negotiating with them. You shouldn't be using your gut feeling to book loads. You're just trying to consistently book loads that either hit or they beat that RPM number that we just figured out. Okay, that's it. Now, just a quick note before we move on. There's going to be times where you might have to take like $1.90 per mile load here, $2.40 there, $1.80 out of a bad market. But if you're averaging that RPM rate over the entire week, then you know you're doing a good job. Oh, and by the way, as I mentioned before, if all this math feels like a lot, don't worry. Again, you can just use my truck calculator that I built for my own dispatching company. If you want to download it, you can find it inside my private school community that I have for truck dispatchers called Dispatcher University. And by the way, while I'm talking about it, just a quick little shameless plug for myself. When you join Dispatcher University, you also get my full 5-week course where I'll show you how I built my 7-figure truck dispatching business step by step. And by the way, if you don't find your first carrier in 90 days of joining, I will give you a full refund. Okay, I'm being dead serious. You literally have no risk to join. So if you want to download this template and other templates like this, and you also want to check out the course, you can go to school.com/dispatch or just click the first link in the description below. Anyways, as I was saying, once you've got all your numbers dialed in for this new authority, you need to figure out where to actually look for loads, and that's where step number 3 comes in, which is finding the hot markets. Even if you know your numbers, and even if a broker is willing to work with your carrier that has a brand new MC number, you still need to know where to run, okay, where to look for loads. And if you pick the wrong lane, or if you end up sending your carrier into a dead market, none of the other steps that we talked about are going to matter. You're literally going to end up screwing yourself. So let me just show you how I use DAT to find the markets that actually pay really, really well. So first and foremost, let's just start with the basics. Don't waste your time using any other load board except DAT. I've been using DAT for over 10 years now, and the only version that gives you all the tools that you actually need is DAT1 Select. Okay, that's the specific load board that I use. That's the one that you need to get as well. I think it's like $199 per month, and yeah, that might sound like a lot if you're just starting out, but remember, you make that back in like 1 or 2 decent loads, so it's really not that bad. Anyways, once you have access to DAT, there's really only 3 tools inside there that I use every single day to find high-paying markets, so let's just go through all of them. First and foremost, tool number 1, Lane Rate View. This one's super simple, but it works really, really well. Basically, if you search for a specific lane, let's say from point A to point B, it's gonna show you the average rate that brokers have paid on that lane over the last 15 days. So for example, if a load is posted by a broker at $1,500, but the lane rate view says, that lane has been going for $2,000, that's proof right there that you can negotiate for a lot more money. Now, when you go talk to a broker, you have some leverage to ask for more money because you know what that lane has been paying other carriers pretty recently. Now, is this tool perfect? No, obviously not. Rates can swing daily, especially around weekends or holidays, but as a baseline, this lane rate view tool is super helpful, especially if you've never run that lane before and you don't want to just take the broker's word for it. So that's the first tool that I would start off with, lane rate view. The second tool that you need is a market conditions map. This one is essentially going to show you the entire country at a glance. Okay, so it's basically like a heat map of truck supply versus load demand. So just a quick overview. The blue markets that we're looking at are the ones that we want to avoid. Okay, that means there is loose capacity. Too many trucks, not enough loads. And on the flip side, the red markets indicate tight capacity. So there's more loads available than there are trucks available. Okay, and that is exactly what we're looking for. Tight markets means more leverage for us. These are the markets where brokers are more desperate to move their loads. Okay, and you can use their desperation to obviously get much higher rates. But, and this is super important, don't just chase these red zones blindly. Okay, some of them look really good going into it, but the backhaul is going to be absolutely garbage. Florida is a perfect example of this. You're going to find many loads paying $4 per mile to go into Florida, but you'll be lucky to get like $1 per mile coming out of it. So always check what's available coming out of that market before you commit to going into it. Okay, and the market conditions map is going to help you figure out where to look, but at the end of the day, it's really just a guide, so don't just follow it blindly. Anyways, this brings me to the third and final tool, which is called TriHaul. This one's basically a cheat code if you're stuck in a bad market, which is going to happen a lot. So instead of going from point A to point B, TriHaul is going to show you like a third stop that you can add to your trip to boost your total profit and raise your average RPM. So again, for example, let's say Milwaukee, Wisconsin to York, Pennsylvania is paying $1,500, but TriHaul might show you that if you go from Milwaukee to Columbus, Ohio, and then from Columbus, Ohio to York, Pennsylvania, you can make $2,100 total and raise your RPM by 50 cents per mile. Obviously, that's a lot better for you and the carrier that you're dispatching for. Now, the only downside to this strategy is that obviously you're adding an extra stop. Some carriers aren't going to like that, but at the end of the day, you're also squeezing more money out of that same lane. So that being said, you have all three of those tools now, you know what to look at, and you can use them to find the highest paying lanes every single day. But I have to be honest with you guys, step number 4 is where most dispatchers screw everything up. They will find a hot market, they know their RPM, they know what tools to use, but when they call a broker, they either freeze up or even worse, they just end up taking the first thing that they see. So in order to avoid that, here's what you need to do. First and foremost, I want you to pick 2 or 3 lanes using the DAT tools that I just showed you and run filtered searches on them. So to do that, just go into DAT, click on the search loads tab, and this is where you can start running those filtered searches. Again, it's pretty straightforward what you need to do here, but one quick note I should make is that you need to use the filters, okay? So set your deadhead, set the preferred weight, the pickup date, the equipment type, all that good stuff. Be very specific in what you're looking for. Now, once your search is locked in, I want you to save it in a separate tab and then run another filtered search for another lane that you're interested in. By the end of all this, you should have at least 2 to 3 tabs open with all different lanes that you want to look at. And by the way, just to make this even better, make sure that you set alerts for every single lane as well. DAT will actually ping you the second a new load pops up that matches your filter, so you don't have to sit there on your computer, refreshing the load board all day. You have to realize that the good loads are going to get scooped up really quick, so you want to make sure you're the first one calling on all of them. Now, as I told you guys before, this is the part where most dispatchers mess up. They'll call one broker, maybe 2, accept the first offer that they're given, and then just call it a day. That's just not enough, okay? You're not doing your job as a dispatcher if that's what you're doing. You need to be calling at least 5 to 10 brokers per lane. The tools that I showed you in the last step, they're just going to show you where to look. But the brokers are the ones that will actually give you the real price that they can offer. They are the final boss that you need to overcome in order to actually get a load for your new MC authority. Oh, and just a final note, on these calls, I'm literally only doing 3 things, okay? First and foremost, I'm just getting the load details. So what's the commodity, the weight, time, stops, driver assist, all that good stuff. I'm also going to check the weather, see if there's any tolls along this route, just doing the normal due diligence that any dispatcher should be doing. The second thing I'm doing is checking to see if this load hits my carrier's RPM. Again, I showed you how to figure this out in step number 2. And finally, the last and probably the most important thing that I'm doing on this call is just making sure that this load actually drops me off into another hot market. This is the part that most dispatchers forget to do. A load might pay you really, really well, but if it drops you into a cold market, your carrier is really going to struggle to get out of it. And if that happens, that's just going to ruin the profit that you made from the first load, so it's not even worth doing that entire run. So every load that you book, you need to make sure that you're setting yourself up for the next one as well. Speaking of which, this actually brings me to the last step that I want to talk to you guys about, which is the number 1 mistake you need to avoid. This step is super simple, but if you get it wrong, none of the other steps are going to matter. And the mistake that I'm talking about is chasing rate per mile instead of revenue per day. Let me explain. Imagine you've got 2 loads in front of you. Okay, one is 1,000 miles, it's paying $3 per mile, and it takes 3 full days to deliver. The other load is 500 miles, it pays $2.50 per mile, and it only takes 1 day to deliver. Now real quick, just pause this video and think about what option you would pick and why. Okay, I actually want you guys to do this. Now, most new, inexperienced dispatchers, they end up picking the first one. Okay, it just looks a lot better. But when you do the math, you see something completely different. That 3-day load in total is going to make you $3,000. However, that 1-day load is going to make you $1,250, but you can run 3 of them in the same amount of time. Okay, so that total comes out to $3,750 in the same 3 days. But listen, it gets even crazier. Most dispatchers don't think of this, but that longer 3-day load also inherently carries more risk. Your carrier is spending more days on the road, which means more chances for things to go wrong. You know, the truck could break down, the load could get delayed, the broker could back out. And if any of that happens, you just wasted 3 days and all $3,000 that you were working towards. So again, in order to avoid that from happening to you, you just need to follow this simple rule. Never judge a load by the RPM. You want to judge it by revenue per day. That's literally the most scientific way to pick the best load, especially when you're working with new authorities, okay? Volume always beats margin. Your goal is to move, it's to stay active, build broker trust. The more reliable loads you run, the faster you're gonna get access to the better paying loads. Anyways, that being said, if you do all this stuff that I just mentioned, you're literally guaranteed to find high paying loads for brand new authorities. But if you don't know what to say to a broker when you call them for a load, then you need to watch this video right here, where I'll show you step by step how I negotiate rates with brokers to get $3 per mile consistently. Also, if you want to start your own truck dispatching business, just join Dispatcher University. It comes with my full 5-week course, all the tools and templates that you need. And if you don't land your first carrier within 90 days of joining, you get all your money back. Okay, you literally have no risk. So go to school.com/dispatch or just click the first link in the description below. And I'll see you guys in the next video.